Hi,
Recording
Leslie.
in progress.
Hello, Peter. How are you? Doing well, thanks. Now that we got the Zoom participants set up,
Anytime anybody wants to say that they've read the minutes and we want to approve them, shoot.
I haven't yet. Were they available online before tonight?
They were on the website, yeah.
I missed them. But don't wait for me.
The video?
yeah, oh yeah, go ahead and start the video, please.
If we could just update the Zoom attendees.
Yep.
I'm gonna refresh.
Yep.
That's the only edit I have to the minutes.
I don't think there's anybody else in the queue. I think everybody wants to be on there is on there.
Oh, to the minutes?
Those aren't the minutes. Do
No, I see that.
you want a set of minutes?
Could I have?
Mr. Chairman, I have an edit for the minutes.
Shoot.
It appears that somehow between the select board meeting and the planning commission meeting, the question was changed. The select board minutes reflect that Beatty suggested the select board pull out the items on the list that they were not comfortable with and send the rest back to the planning commission for review. The planning commission reviewed all 29, including the 5 that the select board did not send back to you. So I think the action you took is void because the issue wasn't before you as to those 4 amendments, 4, 6, 8, 14, and 29, 5, excuse me.
I would like to hear from other people up here, but I'm not sure I remember it exactly that way, Michael.
Well,
Um,
I'm reading from the selectmen's minutes of November 21st, 2023, as posted on the town's website. They say draft, but if you look at the next meeting, they were adopted without any changes.
I recall that we started going through all 29 of them, and Peter said to us that that's not what we should be doing. We should be going through the 4 that were sent back to us. That's my recollection. Do others here at the table want to comment on that?
I remember it the same way.
Well, I don't doubt that that's what you did. I'm just
Yeah.
saying you got bad information. The 5 were not sent to you. The other ones were. The 24 were, the 5 were not.
So you're saying, Mike, that the minutes from the select board meeting state that were incorrect in that they stated that the 20 some odd were sent to us versus when it should have been the other way around?
No. I'm saying that the select board minutes are correct. I was present at that meeting. And as stated in those minutes, it says Beatty suggested the select board pull out the items on the list that they were not comfortable with and send the rest back to the planning commission for review. And when you got to the planning commission meeting, you were told that the 5 were sent back to you for review, and you reviewed all of the 29, and there were only 24 before you.
I guess I would like some more input from this body here. You agreed with my perspective?
I do.
I do also. I absolutely read the blurb as saying that, and they listed the ones that were pulled out to be sent back to us.
Correct.
That's my understanding, and I think that's what we did.
Well, I don't doubt that's what you did, but I'm saying that the information you received was wrong. and the minutes prove that it was wrong.
I do have a question, and I think that we discussed this last time, there's 29, correct?
Yeah.
I keep forgetting. These all had to stay together,
Here's the.
correct?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding what he's asking, but if the select board rejected, essentially rejected all of them because it's as a slate, and then sent it back to us to review, and then it was up to us to either remove or continue to include them as one slate. Is that where the confusion is?
I'm
That's
not
what
sure.
you were told. That's not what really happened.
What do you suggest, Mike, at this point?
Does
Well,
that mean we wasted 2 meetings?
I think it's important because when you go to amending zoning regulations, you have to prove that they were validly warned and all that stuff. And you don't want to get further down the road based on an incorrect assumption. Go back and, if you want to, go back and review the GNAT tape of the select board meeting, you'll find the same thing.
Okay, I'm not sure that we're going to find a solution to this right here and now. I'd like to review that. And I also might like to talk to the town council on it to get some guidance. But I look for input from the other board members on this. Did you want to take an action on this now, Thomas, or do you want to wait on it and get more information?
I don't think that we should, I appreciate the point that you're making, but it's my understanding that the select board rejected the slate based on however many number of items that they were uncomfortable with. So even if they were uncomfortable with one, the entire slate came back to the planning commission. And then at that point, it was up to the planning commission to make a decision as to whether or not they wanted to make any adjustments to the slate, remove any, and then send it back. And that's what we did at our last meeting. And regardless of what the suggestion was, or at least what might be in the select board meeting minutes, that's my understanding. And I feel as though we did the correct thing.
That's how I understood the process as well. And that's what I think we did and accomplished. The things that they thought were, should be removed were modified or, or tabled for the moment. And what exists today is a document that suggests, out of the 29 items, the ones that were modified were kept on, the ones you were not able to get a consensus for were tabled and removed from that.
Well, I have a question for Michael. Michael, are you saying that these weren't properly warned because we didn't go over all 29? Is that what you're saying?
No, let me be clear. You originally, the old board sent 29 amendments to the select board. The select board said it was uncomfortable with 5 of them, and they were of the impression that they could not act on some of them without acting on all of them. So they sent them back to you, the 24. They sent back to you to ask you to send them a package with only the 24. And all that the planning commission had before it, despite what the memo from your staff said, according to the minutes and according to the GNAT tape, the only thing the planning commission had before it were 24 amendments, excluding the 5 which the select board objected to.
My understanding is different than that, Mike. I was under the impression that they sent the 29 back to us, saying that they agreed to 24 of them, and they wanted 5 of them relooked at, which we did. We
Uh,
then took
well-
a vote on, just a minute, we took a vote on 4 of those 5. And the action was what we thought was right and the select board also agreed. There's one still open. That's the status of the situation to me.
We'll go back and listen to the GNAT tape. I would urge you to do that. It doesn't change what you do on these minutes today, but when I raised my objection before the select board, I don't want you to say that I waited until the last minute because I've made you aware of it now. You're not willing to take the minutes as published, so go back and listen to the tape on your own time, and then I think you'll see that it's clear.
We will do that. Now I question whether we're going to approve these minutes as we have them now, or we're going to postpone that.
You know,
I think the minutes reflect what you did. My point in raising it during the discussion of the minutes was, I think you got some bad advice going into that meeting, and therefore you got, on a different track.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask?
Yes.
Mike, it's Craig Hutler. I think at the end of the last planning meeting, they discussed the possibility, or Thomas, I think, brought up the possibility of sending back the uncontested items, the 24, to the select board for what I imagine would be approval. And the other 5 could then be amended or changed or re-deliberated on by the planning commission and sent back at a later date for another round of hearings.
That's not what your minutes reflect, and that's not what the tape reflects.
Well, could they send back the uncontested items to the select board for approval?
Yes,
Okay, so leave the rest of it out. And that would leave those items we had questions about to be further discussed.
Can I just,
Well, you could ask the chairman. You don't have to
oh,
ask
no,
me.
no, no. No, I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt. But, and I've just been told that this isn't what they're talking about. But we got a handout with comments from the select board on the items that we were told were pulled out.
who gave you that handout?
Leslie, they
That was staff.
of staff, yeah, and we rewatched the select board meeting and we summarized what they said in the meeting
Right,
and then put them down, so it wasn't,
You were correct.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand this.
That's not what the tape says. That's not what the minutes say.
Okay, Mike,
How do we solve it?
we're going to approve the minutes as we've got them in front of us, and then we're going to review the tape shortly thereafter, not at this meeting.
I understand.
Thank you very much for your input. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes as we have them?
So moved.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All righty. Can we move on? Open issues from the minutes. RVs and campers. Do you want to go on that one first?
Yeah, we had discussed this a while back. I think it was early in the year last year. When Janet was still here, we started going over, I think actually Greg might have still been on the board at the time too. We were going over RVs. You remember when it was? Was it last year or the year before last? We started this a while back. We looked at RVs and campers. We have no rules or anything around them. So right now it's sort of the Wild West as far as they go. They can really park anywhere, dump their sewage anywhere. There's nobody to stop them. It's a free for all. So I looked at I grew up as a child in Florida, so I grew up on a lot of RVs, a lot of campers, and I looked at some of the rules that different communities there had put in place to curtail just them being willy-nilly everywhere. And I came up with it's a short little summary here about and this can all be changed. This is just sort of a starting point for us. So if there's any everything can be discussed and changed. It's sort of just a launch pad. So RVs and campers, the maximum stay in an RV at a single location for a transient guest is 180 days during any rolling 12-month period, except in designated RV parks or campgrounds, which means in an RV park or campground, you can stay longer because they allow, plus they usually have sewage hookups and whatnot. Recreational vehicles may be used for temporary living or sleeping purposes on private property within the town for up to 6 months or 180 consecutive days, provided that the property owner meets all applicable health and safety requirements with regards to sanitation. No RV parking. No person shall park a recreational vehicle on any public street or alley in the town for more than 24 hours within any 7-day period. Recreational vehicles may be parked in a driveway for a period up to 14 days, but must not block sidewalks or extend into the street or public right-of-way. No more than one recreational vehicle, camping trailer, truck, camper, or motorhome shall be parked on an owner's property at any time unless a temporary permit has been acquired. Recreational vehicles shall be parked, stored in the rear yard or side of the residence, but no closer than 5 feet to any abutting property line. They may not be parked in front of the residence for more than 14 days. And then there's some definitions. Somebody have anything you want to add or questions? Any thoughts?
Comments?
It sounds reasonable. I'm not looking for something that's going to come back and hit us in the face,
No.
but it sounds reasonable to me.
I
You have an RV in your yard, I know, so.
do.
Yeah.
Ours is hooked up to septic, has its own electricity. It's not, I mean, it technically fits within everything you're saying here. I think one of my concerns, and this is from living in Florida for a good amount of time, just like you, are that there are a significant number of, I guess, gated communities, homeowner associations, where they have very similar, very restrictive rules in terms of how and where and how long an RV or, larger vehicles like that can be parked. Do you think it would make sense in terms of the time frame, the timeframes that you're suggesting in here to consider certain zones rather than an all-town situation? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think I said residential area in here somewhere, but it's, it could be, we could clarify different zones for different stay lengths or different abilities for the RV owner.
Sure. And to be clear, I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't be doing anything like this
no.
because we've talked about this before. There's nothing
Right, there's nothing.
currently
This
talks
is,
about RVs or campers.
this is just a starting
Right,
point, yeah. We could add whatever we want to it.
Okay.
I personally think that that's a good perspective to look at, but I also wonder if in the first paragraph, the 6 months or 180 consecutive days is more than should be allowed.
Well, I know I have some neighbors who have an RV inside of their house, and their father-in-law comes up from Florida and he stays in it all summer long. And so that basically is his home during that period. Then he goes back to Florida in winter and stays in Florida. So that's some people do have these, I've seen other properties around that are just an RV on a piece of property and that's it. And it's hooked to septic and people stay there part of the year. It's like a camp. But it's a camp with water and electricity and sewage. So we wouldn't want to say, oh, you can't do that anymore on your property with your RV for the time period you want to stay in it. We wouldn't want to shorten it too much because then we would have a lot of people angry coming in saying, oh, we really wanted to live in this thing part of the year and now we've they designated to like 3 months or
So let's look at Bonnet Street, for instance. From School Street on Bonnet Street over to the bank, there have been a number of houses that have been fixed up very nicely and that are rented. I think Airbnbs probably would be the terminology. But if one of those people decided they wanted to put an RV and not a very attractive one on the front lawn of their house, don't you think the neighbor would rightfully be agitated?
well, the idea is that they aren't allowed on front lawns more than you know, a certain time period, because then they'd be parked there forever and people would be renting them out and they'd be everywhere. So, you know, they have to be beside or behind the building.
Well, Wilbur, I think you do make a good point here, that if, as it stands now, again, an RV or a trailer can be parked anywhere,
Anywhere.
under any circumstance, for any length of
Mhm.
time, maybe with the exception of on the street or at the rec park. And I think this is a spectacular first, like, kind of a starting point, but maybe adding an all out. I think we should at least consider and discuss the possibility of restricting those types of vehicles in MU1.
Mhm.
Or whatever other location where we're thinking about.
I think your earlier comment about applying the zone issue to this is correct, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I also think that, and this is a really good start, as you said. I wonder whether it would be best if we asked staff to do some more investigation on this to get more other rulings from other places where they're dealing with this and what they've done. If that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Do we need a motion on that? I don't know. Do you? Well, I'll jump at once. We'll just say that we're gonna do further work on it
I motion for the staff to look into it, I guess, you know.
and to take into account the zoning. I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
no, I was just, because I really don't know the boundaries very well. I was wondering if we restrict it to one zone, what area we're restricting it to. Because there are other areas where a person or a family may want to or need to have such a vehicle for a period of time. If we restrict it just to that zone, then they cannot do that. And I'm not sure of the boundaries, so in a funny way, I'm giving you a concept, but I don't know the streets that are involved or what the area is. What the square, what the measurements are for that.
Very good point. So that, why
Yeah, I
don't
looked at this,
okay, and maybe
but this is,
Elias would give you a copy of that too.
I have it.
You do
I
it?
have it and I looked at it.
But we just need a map, I think.
You're talking about a
But
map.
this,
We do have that
I
as well.
also have a map. Maybe I should have looked at it again. I have a map. I pulled it out of MU1, MU2.
So,
I'll look at it. I said, I'm just throwing out the concept.
no, I think it's a good point. What zones would be appropriate and what restrictions, and maybe there are different restrictions for different zones.
Yeah.
So are we going to proceed ahead on a motion that we're going to ask staff to look into it and give us more information and we'll address it in the future?
I think that makes sense.
I think that's what you made a motion,
Yeah.
and did I hear a
A
second?
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Before you.
Yes, go
Hear
ahead.
that vote?
Yes, sir.
So two things. One, they're registered vehicles, so staff ought to look into that aspect of them. And two, wastewater permitting as it applies to attaching to the septic. But because it's a registered vehicle, state statutes may have come into play with what you can do and where you can put it on their property. So you want to check and see that you wouldn't be going against the state. Other than that, I think the idea of having, personally, I mean, I have one, and setbacks are something we consider when we put it on the property and try and keep it from being an eyesore for the neighbors, but it's not downtown. So being downtown, having somebody park in a garage, park in front of a garage or something, where that would be a good idea to limit the time. But you do get into registered vehicle issues. So those are two things.
I'm sure that staff has taken down your input and will take it into account as we look at this.
And enforcement. That's your big, that would be something.
Thank you.
Okay.
Decorative lighting in commercial areas?
Okay, I've got some more stuff for you guys. I'll pass.
Oh, wait, you gotta carry your burden. I don't think you finished your vote.
No, we haven't.
Yeah.
We didn't, right, we didn't,
didn't.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yes. Thank you.
Well,
All right, so I printed out this little thing here for you guys, and this is just another town that did a short ordinance for decorative lights. And I included a small picture of the town. Now, this town has a population of 545 people. It gets 3 million visitors a year. Now, by comparison, Manchester gets 300,000 visitors a year. So that's a big difference. And the population is, yeah, for you guys. The population is, like I said, it's a quarter of our population, but they get, 10 times as many people. Or 10 times, yeah, something like that. Is that right? Well, in any case, so what?
Any more of these?
That's all I brought with me. So that the town of it's a town of Helen, Georgia, and what they've done is a very simple, short little part in the middle here that tells what they require. And in the picture on the next page, you can see how it looks at night. You can see the little small town section. You can see all the lights on the gables, and it really looks festive. It brightens the whole town up, and they don't put them up for people. They just require people to do it. It's part of like having a sign up for your business. It's required. So it's not. But like I said, people come to this town. This town doesn't have a whole lot in it. It's not a very big area. It's got a fudge shop. There's no factory outlets. It's got some German restaurants. That's about it. But people come there because of how it looks, and they want to get pictures there. They want to just see it. They want to, ride through and walk around at night. And that's, we don't have to have businesses here to get people to come here. But if we get people to come here, the businesses that are here, they will benefit from the increased traffic. So,
Comments? I'll comment. First of all, thank you so much for doing this. And secondly, I would like to suggest that you reach out to somebody in the Manchester Business Association and talk to them about it to see whether they think this could fly and how to do it. Having been in the retail business, I worry about making it mandatory, but I wonder if you could get enough excitement and support about it that people are going to want to do it instead of it having to be mandatory. And then the other last issue, I won't say anymore, is it doesn't work unless you can get people to be open at night, in my opinion.
yeah, I don't know. It's not about really being open at night. It's about making the place look open at night. It's about making it look, when you pull into town, like so you're coming from New York, you're coming up from the city and you want to go skiing, and you pull into Manchester to your hotel, and it's 10 o'clock at night and you're tired and you want to go to a hotel, but you pull into this dark, empty looking town, and it's like, oh, this is where we're staying. But if you pull into the town and it's lit up and it's beautiful, you're like, oh, look at this place that we're staying. It's a totally different attitude when you come in, and it makes it feel different. And you're going to want to spend more time in a town the next day when you wake up and walk around and see things. It's just it's marketing.
I think there's a lot of upside to this. I repeat myself, I think going to the Manchester Business Associates, or whatever that terminology is, I can't remember the name of it, and see if you can get a buy-in on that would really be good. Having been in the business where you try to get the business on Friday night when they're arriving, it was painfully not very successful. What happens is you get business up until about 7 o'clock, and then from 7 o'clock till 10, it's totally dead. And then they start arriving at 10, and by then you have a staffing problem.
Yeah.
And but this, I would think that the restaurants are obviously going to be open, but it would be great if you could get some retailers to go along with it, because it's a welcoming thing. I think it's got potential. Other comments?
Yeah, I mean, I'd add, I do think having buy-in from the Manchester Business Association absolutely makes sense, because we're, at least as a first step initiative at looking into this, because I love the idea. I think I do have some concerns about making it a requirement. But I will say this, and I think what you're suggesting when you talk about making it feel more welcoming, and because you're right, when you come into town after time, it does feel very dark. There's not a lot of lighting, and part of that is because businesses are closed. The other part of it is that we just don't have a significant amount of lighting beyond some of the,
And they really don't want a lot of lights.
things. But I will add that when we were on, so my family and I were on the ownership team for Village Picture Shows for that, before we lost our only theater in town, that we decided to start having late shows, like very late shows. And at first, people were concerned. They're like, people in Manchester don't go out after a certain time. And while that's relatively true, we were really surprised at the number of people that continued to show up at these really late shows just because we were open. We took the risk of being open. And I think Wilbur makes an excellent point when he mentioned, he referenced having people to actually staff these businesses after a certain time. But it's almost I'd like everyone to think about it as if you build it, they will come type of a scenario. So if, not to suggest that this should necessarily be a requirement, a legal requirement of businesses, but when we create an environment ahead of time that makes it feel more welcoming and even more beautiful than it is now, I think that will bring more people at a later time of the day, and give our local businesses an opportunity to continue to stay open, assuming that they have the resources to do that. But I do think Wilbur's making a really great point about creating some level of buy-in from the MBA. Because we're certainly talking about an expense here, at least an initial expense. But maybe that's something that they can help with. And if that buy-in is there, then that's also where we could step in and say, well, here are the requirements to make it not necessarily mandatory, but uniform.
Could you back up just a little bit? Since I'm the treasurer of the MBA, I would like to just exactly what you're referring to.
Why don't you come up and pick this up, Bill? Here, Bill.
What he has in his hand, Bill, this is an ordinance from a town in Georgia that has a population of 500.
Did you mean to leave your truck going?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. All right.
This is a town, Bill, in Georgia that has a population of 545 people. And they have 3 million visitors a year. And one of the reasons is because the town is so photogenic. It's a beautiful little town. They put lights on all their gables in the MU1 district. So it makes it just draws people to the town, and we're trying to embrace more of the tourist aspect of Manchester and to draw more people in. And so that's just a picture of the town and a picture of, and a copy of the ordinance they have for what they require. And, I was hoping that we could institute something similar in Manchester.
Okay, I think just having lived with this issue for a number of years, both on the planning commission and outside. In many respects, the feeling in the past is to kind of minimize lighting. Like, the night sky attitude and so on. So I think that would take a lot of community discussion.
Usually Christmas lights they aim downward, whereas, you get a lot more
Understand?
blowback from street lights.
Bill, how would you recommend that we have a dialogue with the Manchester Business Association so that there's more than just this group right here talking, maybe some more?
That's fairly easy. I think you contact John Burnham and try to set up, they have monthly meetings. Usually 8:30 on a Tuesday morning. I'm not sure it's the second meeting of the month, and ask to be put on the agenda. That I would think would be a starter to somebody come in, or to a couple of people, or the whole board come and talk about the issue. I don't see that being a problem, but it can happen really readily.
Glad you're here.
Leon, do you want to do that or do you want somebody else?
I mean, I don't know if I'm eloquent enough or a good enough speaker to do it, but if someone wanted to come with me and do a presentation together, that would help.
What would be helpful to, rather than general principles, is to have some broad outlines of which you anticipate how this would translate into
Yeah,
a program.
we would
I think you mentioned lights around the eaves of roofs.
yeah, just on the eaves of roofs, that's it. Just along the eaves. It's a simple thing, but it transforms all these towns that have done it. It really makes a difference in the overall look and feel of the town.
Bill, where does John Burnham work?
Well, he hangs out at the visitor center during the middle of the week, and I think there's also an email address, which I can
Okay,
probably pull up pretty quick.
great.
So getting into the nitty gritty of this, I'm a really big fan of the old traditional incandescent, small lights versus the LEDs. So if you do get something bad, I don't think you distinguish between
Warm and cold.
warm and cold, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
Because I'm 100% against it.
yeah,
Warm.
cold lights.
The good news-
100% against the LED holiday lights, so,
Yeah.
number one. Well, they do have some. that-
There's some warm ones.
Yellow.
There's some yellowy warm
There's
ones.
Some yellow.
But the cold ones, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the difference.
You're gonna run into that kind of thing, and as has already been discussed, I just wonder I mean, there are lots of things that we mandate businesses do at their own expense. Sidewalks, for example, outside in front of the sidewalk, so this might fall under that. And I think, Mr. Chairman, that what Leon's suggesting is much more aesthetic versus tied to businesses open late. I think this would be great as an aesthetic, but I don't think we should tie it to mandating anybody stays open any later than they currently do. My wife's in retail, and she'll tell you, staying there from 8 a.m. until 7 p.m. is off the table.
I think I hope I stated this before. I don't think you can tell somebody how late they have to stay open, but if this works as it's envisioned to work, they may want to stay open later.
Exactly, yeah, that would be a good sign.
But I also am concerned about the cost of doing this for a small retailer. That's just an issue, but maybe the thing to do is for Leon to coerce some other people to help him put together a 1-pager or a 2-pager to send to both John Burnham and the Manchester Business Association and to the select board to see if we can start a bigger dialogue about it.
And after this year, by the way, there was a committee that was set up with volunteers for holiday lighting. So because of the new town manager getting into the swing of things, we got a little bit of a late start on the DPW side.
It was a little down.
But that was brought up and addressed, so they're working on next year that may be totally different.
If you had any specific advice on what more you'd like to see in a presentation to the business association and the select board to just start the dialogue, tell us.
Well, the usual situation is, ideas are great. Implementing is a tough story, so, steps of how do you suggest implementing? That's where the rubber starts to meet the road. Yeah, I think a lot of people say this is a great idea, but now how do we implement it? And who's gonna be responsible? And when you take a look like running lights up along the eaves of the roof, well, where's the electrical supply to make that happen? Okay, and then how do you get them up there? Okay, do they stay up all year long? You gotta think those programs through and have answers for those.
Any other comments here?
I can give you an email address, if you want.
Yeah.
Really simple. It's John@Manchester, Vermont, all together. Oops. Yeah, manchestervermont.com.
Okay.
John@manchestervermont.com. No space.
Not spelled out.
Yes.
Any other comments from the table here? Alrighty, should we move on? Communication towers. Peter and I had a phone conversation with a ranger, correct, Peter?
Yes, sir.
From the National Forest Service. And it was basically just introductory to talk about where and if it's possible that you can put a tower on forest land. And I think I would say it was purely introductory, and I will look to you to make further comments.
I think there was a discussion along the lines of a contractor that you may have known that may be helpful in the process of identifying where on those forest lands that might be appropriate to suggest a tower, in terms of coverage and in terms of, these folks are going to want to know that they can access the property. They're going to know that they can get power to it. So there's a number of different logistical problems that have to be addressed. And it's not something that I have in my pocket. So
So a little further information, the town, I believe, the PUC has told that Verizon that they need to give more information on the issue. Would you say that's right, Greg?
That's about set right back over to Peter. I think that's correct. I think that's where we are right now.
So when there was the large meeting on the issue, Verizon's lawyer brought an associate who's we're going to forget the name now, not an originator, a propagator. And that job is to determine where in our valley, so to speak, a tower would be functional to give us coverage in this area. Say there's not good coverage in this area. If you put the tower in a certain spot, it's going to address that need. And that type of person is available. It's a business. I have the name of one of them. A friend of mine puts in towers in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and he gave me the name of a firm that could do that if we needed it. But I also just want to say that I don't think this is part of our purview here, but it's just a piece of information relative to that issue, which is on the agenda. So I think I'll leave it at that. Is that all right?
correct.
And yes,
Just as a point of information, I think the PUC's deadline for comments, which was March 9th, now is going to push back to May something. May, it just got noticed in the mail today.
Is that because of their asking for more information, or no, is that the PUC asked Verizon for more information as to why they should be able to do what the town has said, wait a minute, we have some.
Could be. It just said the deadline for comments from all parties has been
Yeah, the deadline was the 23rd of February, I think.
to May something.
Thank you. Town plan.
Sorry, can we?
Did you memorize it yet?
Of course not.
In-
Can we back up just a second though?
Yes.
When we're talking about the communication towers. Since we do have can't think of the correct term here, but we do have a role, just like the select board does have a role, either opposing and supporting or continuing to oppose this particular location. Do we have a plan, or do we, as a group, do we have an idea as to how we may want to continue opposing any public comments that Verizon may make as they begin to make their case to the PUC? Because we have made the select board as well as the planning commission has made a public statement saying that we reject this proposal under certain standards.
I think the issue, yes, the planning commission and the select board have both said they have problems with this location. Specifically, the planning commission has said that it's not zoned in that place and it's too high. So those are the two things we can present our case on now. I said to Peter a while ago, is there something we should be doing to make our position stronger? I.e., should we say that you can only do it in this zone or in this area as such? And I believe, and I'm going to ask Peter for clarification, but I believe he said that it's more of a council issue than an issue for us. I don't know. Is that right?
We have zones that have approved locations, industrial and office locations are accepting tower locations. Part of the argument that may be brought out is something that I think you're familiar with the Enosburg problem. And I think they addressed it by saying it doesn't fit into our community. It's a visual impact and therefore they're not behind it. So those are the types of things that we could discuss in greater detail, I guess. And part of that, I'd have to, seek counsel on delivering that message.
Can I ask a question? What is how successful are we presently in getting coverage to our population? I really don't know. I hear from people who complain. I know, I don't live more than about 7 minutes from where we are. And my cell is very unpredictable in my home. It seems to me that we need this kind of tower or service to come into the town. I think that, the question is, where can it go? And how do we meet the needs of those folks who just aren't being served? Some of it may be, a lot of it, I think, is more rural. I don't know if it's possible to put together some of this information. Maybe we have it. I'm too young. No, I'm not, definitely not too young, but I'm too new to know, to have all that data. But maybe we should take a look at it and make some determinations
before we just decide that, no, we don't want it. I mean, I personally, I would like to see something. I'd like to see it where it's going to do the most good for the most people, and where it also is not going to, destroy scenic areas. To what extent is it possible, if we can make these determinations, to actually work with Verizon, if it's going to be Verizon, to come to some solution?
Yes.
So in answer to that, there, in the both meetings for the AT&T tower that was going to be placed right in the middle of town, and the Verizon tower, which was going to be placed behind us over here, at close to the rink. All of those issues you just brought up were addressed. And so one of the things, there is a website for the state that shows where the current towers are and the repeaters that they use to bring work. For instance, Verizon going up and over the mountain towards Bromley is incredibly good. AT&T drops out halfway up the mountain. There's a huge dead zone along the road here on 7A when they have the concerts in the summer here in the fields. There's no coverage. And then the other big issue is when we get a big influx of people to town during the summer, the bandwidth is reduced to about 0. So really the issue now is primarily where it's sited, that it has the least visual impact for a number of different reasons. And we discussed it on the select board level, I believe. And also, I think we talked about this last time in the meeting about the possibility of getting somebody who can point out places that would work in conjunction with what do they call it? By location or something that works with the existing towers. So that they triangulate, for example, to cause better coverage. But everything you just brought up was pretty exhaustively discussed. And now it's just a matter of, we really could use somebody to come in and say that this would be a good place that probably wouldn't irritate the residents, for example.
All right.
Peter, I sent that propagator's name to you, didn't I?
I believe I have it, yes.
Yes. So that the person that I was led to,
Was the
referred
consultant.
to is, that information is, Scott has it also, I believe.
Yeah.
Bill,
But one of the issues is that when they apply for their application, they apply for a 140-foot tower. But they can put their antenna at 100 foot. But what happens is that this whole tower management and operation is turned over to a third-party firm. And then they locate additional cell towers. If you look at the one down next to the highway there, it has 5 different services on it. So they could get probably what they want a lot easier if they were willing to limit themselves to 100 foot and just them being on the tower. But that's not how it typically operates.
Sorry.
yes.
The cell phone companies don't own, the tower companies only own the towers almost instantly after transaction and then
Turn it over.
lease it.
Yeah.
So so like Verizon would not be in the business of owning a tower.
Well, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah,
is that there's another management company that takes over these towers and then tries to make more money by putting additional co-locators on it. And that's why they want the 140 feet when they could really live with a lot less. And that 40 feet, when you get above the tree line, can make a big difference in visibility and so on.
My personal opinion is that we're getting into areas where we don't have the specific scientific knowledge to address this intelligently. And maybe it's at a point where Scott will say, or the select board Scott will say, it's time to get this propagator in here to tell us what we need to know specifically, where it has to be, how high it has to be, et cetera. And maybe what Verizon's saying is not the best thing. And quite frankly, in my opinion, they want that space because they can walk right to it. Obviously, there's no cost versus the one over in Dorset, somebody had to spend a lot of money to get halfway up the hill. That's the first issue. But I think I'd leave it at, go ahead, I'm sorry, Tom.
No, if,
I'd leave it at that, is maybe it's time for the select board to say to Scott, let's educate ourselves about, go ahead.
And then, once you have that information, you can massage the language going into the town plan. Because without that information, there's no point in as doing anything by insertion at this point.
Yes. Tom.
so just to clarify, my point, the reason why I wanted to come back to this, my intent was for it to be quickly, which is fine. My point in coming back to this was to make sure that we continue to be aware of any changes or information that comes back from the PUC or Verizon or whoever the group is as this planning commission, because we have formally opposed it. And if we're going to, I think that we should continue opposing it at its current location. So I just wanted to make sure that we, as a group, continue to receive that information. And if we have the opportunity and decide to take the opportunity to continue opposing it formally, that we do that. I will add that we certainly do need cell towers in this town. I can't tell you how, particularly in the last week or two, just in the last week or two, dozens and dozens of people have said, what is going on with my phone? I'm having to restart my phone just to make a single phone call. And to be honest, I question whether or not that is intentional, as we are formally opposing this particular location. And so again, I personally oppose this specific location, but I do think that we need cell towers and we do need more coverage.
Right.
And I totally agree, Thomas, that once we send our recommendations, both from the PC and from the select board, it's essentially at that point up to the PUC. I mean, they have our recommendation and at that point, they may decide to put it there or not. But we've done our part. So I don't believe there's another way to have either more hearings to send more disagreement with it. But it sounds like, based on your article, I think in the journal too, that they've got a little bit of a hurdle on going forward. So we'll see how it goes.
Hey, Peter, could you make sure that this committee is appraised of everything that's going on, that Scott gets back from the PUC and
Absolutely, sure.
and the lawyer?
And can we make it clear that while we're opposed to this location, not only are we not opposed to more cell service and the towers that are required, but we support them, but there has to be an understanding of where they can go.
I'll just answer that question. I think that's been established in both of those hearings, that people weren't opposed to having more coverage just where the towers were.
Yes, Heidi.
To take it just a step further too, I think what we'd love to see from the planning commission is not only, here are some possibilities for where the towers could be, but then also strengthening the language in the zones where we certainly do not want them to be. And so I think we're all in agreement that we're in need of this. We should be the people that choose, not the cell phone companies.
I don't know how you strengthen the language relative to the fact that it's not allowed in a certain zone.
Ever.
Well, but the other big issue too is you get that some towns that have gone up against this have gotten themselves embroiled in some very, very expensive legal problems. And to the extent that we can, we should be aware of that and try to avoid it.
I got an education from the leadership of Amesburg Falls and from Warren about their two situations, and it was very helpful to me. But it's to cut to the chase and to, I think, close this out. It's in the hands of the PUC, and we really don't have any control anymore, I don't believe. And we'll hear what they say. But the encouraging thing to me was they supported Enosburg Falls, I believe. So, should we move on? Town plan. Thomas, you want to start? You memorized it?
I have. Should I recite it?
So I think we ought to try to figure out how we're going to address this. Do we want to just have a discussion amongst us, not tonight, a discussion amongst ourselves about what issues people feel are concerned with the town plan specifically? Because I believe we would have to warn when we get to the specifics. But a discussion about what concerns us, each of us individually. You're the veteran. What should we do here?
Chris is more of a veteran than I am. Chris?
I haven't really had a chance to look at the town plan too much. I mean, I haven't had too many issues with it. I mean, if they have more input, any changes they want. I mean, we've discussed some of the changes as far as like lands, like tables we wanted to change, but nothing.
One of my big problems with it is it's very hard to find particular things when you want to find them because of the way it's laid out. It's very hard it's just the organization, because it was all put in piecemeal, one thing at a time here and there, just kind of shoved in. Like it's like a notebook with papers just shoved all over it. And it's hard to find things in it. So it needs to be sort of just looked at in sections and go, okay, what belongs in this section? Does this belong in this section? And taking things from other places and just reorganizing it so that someone can come in and say, okay, if I want to put a extra building on my property, what's the size of it? Is it 10 square feet? Is it 120 square feet? How big is it? So you can find that easily, because right now that's an example of something that's very buried, very hard to find.
I find it that way with the ordinances also.
Ordinance is the same way. Yeah.
I want to figure out how we take our first step here. Do you want to put on paper what your concerns are, like you just stated? And we come together and discuss those next time?
I actually looked over the town plans. Janice gave me a copy of all the town plans from actually like 1988. And I looked through all of them. And basically what we were doing, we were just adding, each one got a little bit thicker because we were adding a little bit to each one. And we never really, started from scratch. We always just added to the existing. And so that's what, when Janet initiated this, she was saying that we needed to tear down and start from scratch a whole new town plan rather than trying to add to the existing one,
I've gotten the direct instruction, I think, from the select board that we're not doing a total rewrite.
We're not rewrite, but more like reorganization and rebuild.
I'd like to add to that because well, actually, I have a question first. Regardless of how we go about writing or editing or whatever is decided in terms of the town plan, who does the BCRC have to approve whatever we write? Is that required?
I would imagine so, yeah.
So, do they have a tendency to approve things if we have made a conscious decision to not work with them directly?
Yeah, we haven't made a conscious decision to not work with them.
Well, if we've declined the $24,000 grant.
There's still money in the budget to work with
I understand there's still money in the budget, but that's $7,000. But if we were given free money and we declined it, I understand that the five of us all have different opinions and we've all read the town plan at a certain level. But that doesn't seem to me to be a truly equitable way to look at building a town plan. we're not giving every single person in this community the opportunity. I mean, all 5 of us are white. All 5 of us are of certain age and up. I have concerns about just the 5 of us, generally speaking, the 5 of us, coming here and saying, here are our concerns, either personally or from our circle of friends.
I'm
And
going
not
to
giving-
interrupt first for a minute. We said in a previous meeting that we wanted to figure out how to get input from the town. So that's what I'm trying to lead into here is what are the first steps? Do we go out ourselves and study the town plan and the ordinances and come back amongst this group with concerns that we have? One was right there, very valid. I have that same feeling. Should we all put on paper what our concerns is and talk about it? And then the next step may be to go out to the town and say, we're addressing the
Yes.
town plan and the ordinances. And if you have input, if you have concerns, come to us. It's going to take a long time. This is going to be multiple meetings. But what I want to determine is what does this group want to do initially? What's the first step?
I think that is the first step. I think that makes sense.
So let's go and leave this and say, we're going to educate ourselves on both the ordinances and the town plan. And if you want it printed, which I like, Elias did that for me. And I find it easier to go through myself, but that's just probably my age, but
No, I do too.
let's try to come, and my question is, do we want to do it at our next meeting? Do we want to come and start talking about what bothers us, just like what was said there, and
Sure.
get it more specific? Is that your hand up, Bill?
I'm waiting for you to finish.
I'll finish.
Oh, okay. I want to, just listening to Leon and your comments, I want to make sure we don't confuse zoning ordinances.
Yeah.
Because the issue you mentioned to me, I said you go
That-
to the zoning
The
ordinance.
zoning order, I know.
Yeah,
I was
it's the
just,
zoning ordinance.
I couldn't think of anything that in the town plan right offhand, so I just pulled that up.
Yeah, so that's what I think we have to be careful about, the town plan is the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And that helps draw up the rules for what you're talking
Right.
about.
Where we're going, our direction.
The other side of the coin is, have we heard complaints about the town plan from many residents? Or any residents?
I've only heard good.
Well, let me ask, how many people are in this room right now? And how many people don't have the physical ability to show up here?
Yeah,
Not just physical ability, but the time or the financial resources.
So
And so that's,
what's your
that's
point,
what
Thomas?
my point is regardless of whether or not we've heard concerns about the town plan, and yes, we have these meetings monthly. Yes, the select board meets, what is it, bi-monthly? Or every other week. Just because we have these meetings available open to the public does not mean that every single person in our community has the ability to show up and speak.
Okay, there are two
And that's-
answers to that is how do we address that if you think that there's an upswell, a lot of people who can't get here but have concerns. But the other point is what Bill pointed out is that have we heard a lot of people say the town plan's no good? I don't think I've heard that.
I don't necessarily, I
can
just
I-
don't think we've given
can I
people the
butt
opportunity
in
to.
here?
And I agree that the first step is for us to discuss some of the issues that we may have personally have or have heard from people. And again, I think that the steps after that would be creating a significant amount of community involvement at varying levels. So giving people the opportunity to respond online, giving people the opportunity to respond via email, via email or mail, giving people the opportunity to come to different community events at different times of day, different days of the week, providing daycare for families who may have, and that's where, if we're only budgeting $7,000 for this, that's where I
We
have
don't have
concerns if the $23,000.
We have a hand up right here.
We do, yeah.
We have an issue with the voice.
Yep, one
I think
second.
he's-
There we go.
Unmute.
Should be.
Hi, Planning Commission members. I would love to see community involvement in a town plan. I was recently looking at Londonderry's town plan. I can't tell who was speaking to the organization of Manchester's town plan, but Londonderry's town plan, they take the goals and the objectives that the town wants to strive to reach in the timeframe that they've outlined. And then they put all the things that they're going to do underneath each goal and objective and what the reasoning is behind that goal and objective. As a community member, I would love to help the planning commission or is it the planning commission or the planning board? I'm never sure what Manchester calls itself. But I would love to help you and volunteer and be a part of this. To the person who mentioned, have we heard a lot of complaints? No one's asked me. No one's asked me for my opinion on the town plan. So if someone had asked me, heck yes, I would have provided some feedback. I look at what our town to the south of us, Bennington, is doing in order to create their upcoming town plan. And they are doing everything humanly possible to get input from as many people and as many different voices so that they can construct a really informed town plan representing the hopes, the dreams, the goals, the objectives of their residents.
Thank you, Victoria.
Just from an historical perspective, in the town plan, at the very end, is what I think ought to be in the very beginning. But it says, the 2017 town plan was developed by the Planning Commission with the assistance of town staff, the Conservation Commission, an ad hoc Arts and Culture Committee, and members of the Manchester Historical Society. It is essentially a reorganization and update of the 2012 plan and added required new sections on flood resilience and renewable energy resources. The Planning and Conservation Commissions held numerous public meetings throughout 2016 to work on sections of the plan and seek public input. The Planning Commission then prepared a final draft in February of 17 to propose to the public and forward to the select board for adoption versus the BCRC for adoption in May. After the 2020 census, the commission will draft a new plan incorporating new census data that will continue to refine the format of the plan to more clearly incorporate action items associated with particular adopted policies and goals. You're right at the beginning of that process. And it incorporates all of the public and various committees mentioned.
To be clear, though, you just stated that it was reorganized in 2012. So when was the last time a town plan?
2017. 2017.
You referenced 2012, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they say that it was.
So when was the last time a town plan was written from scratch, not just involving certain committees and groups, but the entire community? That is my point.
2017.
The whole community.
Can I jump in?
Can you repeat what you said about 2012?
No,
It was a revision of the town.
The 2017 plan was a revision of the 2012 plan?
With all of that input and it was a pretty big deal, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop this for a second here and say that what I started on this point on the agenda was, how do we start this? I think the first thing we need to do is each of us study the town plan. I'd like to say at the same time, the ordinance is too, because in my opinion, the ordinances are very difficult to follow. If somebody came into town and wanted to do X, it's really tough to figure out what he has to go through and how he achieves it, et cetera. But I think we need to start out by saying, okay, let's look at the town plan and what is the problem with it? I'm not saying it shouldn't be fixed. I don't know. I don't know it that well. But I'd like to talk about when we're going to do that, to what degree we're going to do that. Are we going to set aside an hour to do it? Are we going to do it at our next meeting? When are we going to do that? And then just what Greg said about how the process took place last time, we should analyze that so we educate ourselves as to maybe the steps. And as to your concern, Thomas, about including the community, we obviously want to include the community. I believe the process for that is to forewarn, to public warning about here's what, we're going to have a meeting here, here, and here to talk about it. That's the process that you do. So do we want to start talking about this? And I want to go to April 8th. April 8th is the lunar eclipse. Do we want to have a meeting that day or not? It should be over where we physically are. The partial eclipse should be over by 4:30. Do we want to meet at 5:30 that day, or do we want to delay it a week?
It's fine.
That's a very good question. I'm glad you brought that up.
I don't know.
I think it's a while for us to wake up.
I would meet that day at 5:30. It would be over,
That'd
so.
be fine with me.
What would you?
I could,
Okay, so we're going to stay on April 8th at 5:30 for the next meeting. And to what degree do we want to spend time on the baby steps of starting the town plan discussion? Do we want to say we're going to set aside somewhere north of a half hour to start that and then go back and work again toward the next meeting? Bill?
Sure.
Yeah, a suggestion here that it would be appropriate that everybody does a deep dive on the town plan, including anybody in the audience that is interested. And Thomas talked about starting from scratch. To me, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Well, it
But
was,
if you got a part in it that needs changing out, that's what you do.
when all this was started, Janet announced to all of us that we would be starting from scratch. She said it hasn't been started from scratch since like 88 or something, and it just had added on to over the years. And the original core ideas that were started back then may not be relevant now because it's been 30 years or something. So
Well, let's look at it and determine that.
I agree. That's why I took a stack of them home and looked through them to see.
I think that's the point right there. Let's look at it and see what the issues are and to what degree we need to fix something. Or if we look at it and say it's terrible, maybe we then have to go to select board and say this really needs a rebuild. I don't know, but.
Peter, is it possible in the next meeting for you to bring in a bunch of the old ones going back?
Absolutely. I can make those available for you to look at
Yeah.
anytime during the midweek. If you need copies of them, we can make copies.
Just
Heidi?
looked at them.
It kind of got covered. I'm not gonna rehash it.
Okay.
It's also online on the town website.
All the old ones?
Not all the old ones,
Yeah.
but the current.
I think so. We'll look back and see, like, because you said that last page had told how they had come up with the committees for that plan. Well, I'm sure the older ones would have those pages as well. So it was nice to look back and see what they did over the years to build up the plan.
Leslie?
I would associate myself with Thomas's concern, request for community engagement. I mean, I've been here 10 years. You don't discuss the town plan with your neighbors. You know, it doesn't come up.
I do.
Well, yes, okay, and I was a legislator in Newton, Mass, so I'm aware of that kind of thing. However, here, not so much. I do think that it's important, whatever we decide to change or not change, I think it's important that, and I said this before, I think the first time we met and we're talking about it, I think it's important for us to figure out various ways to tap into the community, whether it's panels, roundtables. There are a variety of ways. Bennington has done it. Bennington is quite a bit larger than we are. and they have done it. So it can be done. But you have to obviously plan for it, you have to warn for it. I mean, there's a process. But I really do believe that we need that input. And I felt strongly about that in the beginning, and I still feel strongly about it. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to redo the whole plan.
I don't think,
we need
Leslie,
to
I don't
hear.
think anybody has inferred that we're not going to try to get input into this process.
Well, there's,
So
I'm not
here's
gonna
the
say
question.
anything
How
else
do you get the
right now.
community then to look at the town plan and understand it, and then to give feedback on?
Bill, they may not read the town plan, but they may have concerns, and their concerns are going to be nested somewhere in here. It's going to have to do with education. It's going to have to do with housing. It's going to have to do with some area that is present in the plan. And it may be something we can say, well, you know, this is what it says, and it's covered, and it agrees with you, and blah, blah, blah. Or it may be something that we take back and we say, you know, let's look at this. And it's work. I mean, it's, you know, it's not easy necessarily to do, but you do it. I did it in a city of 95,000 people. And it was a several-year process that we went through. So.
Victoria still has her.
Yeah, she has her hand, but still.
Has, to the planning board, has anyone reached out to Bennington and asked them for like an outline on the steps that they've taken to engage the community and to get their process, what their process has looked like and what it has taken in terms of staff time and volunteer time and funding?
I can do that.
I think that might be a good place to start to help. Like Wilbur asked a great question, like, where do we start? It might be interesting to ask Bennington or ask I like to call him our sister town, Woodstock, to see what Woodstock has done lately in terms of rewriting their town plan and what steps they took.
I think the first thing we need to do, and I believe that all of us, maybe with the exception of Leon and Chris, have not done the necessary work to make ourselves very aware of the detail of the town plan and the ordinances and what problems we see with them. That's the first step. Then if we define problems that exist, then let's go to other towns and see how they dealt with those problems and such. But unfortunately, I don't know yet how you warn any further than what's been done in the past. But we do need to warn, and we need to, first of all, educate ourselves. I don't have enough knowledge of these two things, the town plan and the town ordinances, to be able to sit there and say, this is an issue we have to address, or this isn't covered, or we're not covering this. I don't know it, and I don't think anybody else does either. So
I don't.
let's educate ourselves, and then
Can
let's
we-
decide on.
Can I ask what the goal of a town plan is?
No, you can't. Then we might, on April 8th, we might decide that we're not educated enough and we have to go back and look more deeply. But I think we're beating around the bush right here. Do your homework and then let's talk about it. Okay, we're going to move on. New issues, habitat contact. I'll take 2 seconds before I get to Bill. I had some. Matter of fact, I had lunch with Bill in which he educated me on some of the housing issues and specifically prices. And I went and talked to the people from Habitat and I was very impressed, by the way, and I went and saw their latest building and then got them connected, Ty's boss connected with Gordon Black. And I believe that there is a good dialogue going on there that should be, I hope, very beneficial. There's been some identification of areas where something could happen. It's really not our purview here, but it's something that I think everybody that's in the governance of the town should be concerned about is the housing issue, and Habitat really impressed me. Secondly, density issue. I'm not going to get into this now because we have another issue and we have a time problem. Bill wants to talk about an issue with the bike path between the village and here. And so I'm going to let you get into that.
Well, I'm here representing the Manchester Bike Committee. And it's my understanding that the village has applied for a grant or has received a grant to study bike pathways down to our town line and through the village. And whether we should be coordinating with them, and the main probably stickling point where we need to coordinate with them is traveling up Main Street or Route 7A between our roundabout and the village center, up to the Equinox area. That's a huge concern for people because of the narrowness of the road. There is a sidewalk, the bikes aren't supposed to be on the sidewalk, and people are wanting to see if there's other alternatives to incorporate safe bike travel along that stretch of road. So I'm suggesting that the planning commission look at maybe joining up with the village in their study, whether or not we have to take piece in a small part of the local contribution, make it a joint study.
I'm fairly certain that we committed funds to this. We allocated money already to collaborating on this. So I'd have to fill minutes, but that I'm 99% sure that we already did that.
That'd be great.
I think that both planning commissions from the village and here applied, I'll take your word for it, that we've applied for a grant. And I think after having a very, very brief discussion with the chair of the village planning commission, that might have come back as approved. So what I think that would be a good conversation to have with their chair as well to coordinate that. and to figure
Peter,
out
do you
where-
know
where
anything
we're
about
at.
this?
Nothing, no. So
I could be wrong, but
I'll look into it. I'll contact the chair of the village.
I feel like about 2 years ago.
He came here and he presented to us and we agreed to it.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to know that what they're concerned about asking is in place, that this is a joint study to upgrade the corridor or how we can upgrade the corridor between the village and the center, Manchester Center.
Other
That's all. Thank you.
Other comments on that issue? New issues? I'm going to touch quickly on this density issue. So if you go to that sheet that I pulled out and you look at the density on the R1, RR, and RA, where we go from 1 acre to 5 acre to 10 acres, I'd like to be able to have this as a conversation piece the next time we meet. Because I kind of look at it as something of a taking. And I think it's in conflict with the needed desire of the town to address the housing issue. Because this is making the lot size much, much bigger. And that's not in our best interest. So are you saying no to me or
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yep,
So let's look at that when we talk next, okay?
yeah. So we're looking to perhaps suggest, recommend I know where it is, I read it. That it be, we need more density in those areas.
Chris,
I
you
mean, that was
remember,
my feeling.
I believe Chris was here when we had this discussion, when we were talking about like areas like rural residential, the large lot sizes and the amount of trees they could cut down and all the different aspects of all of that. And I think we brought up during that time, I think I might have brought up to Greg, I said to him that why can't we make those lots smaller? why do they need to be so big? He said, because they're so far out of town that we can't get sewer and different things out to them to really make a lot of lots, and they have to have a certain amount of land for their septics, for certain things. So if we make the lots too small and they've all got septic tanks, suddenly we have a larger issue on our hands. So that was one of the part of the discussion for, I know, rural residential. You know, now there's of course close to middle of town, we talked about multifamily housing and all sorts of things being allowed. But I know in those other areas, the larger lots was because there wasn't much of an alternative as far, for logistics for sewer septic.
Can't there be a shared system if you're going to have
That's tough,
subdivision?
because if it clogs, then you have to, who's going to pay for it to be pumped? You know, that's sort of that's a tougher thing to do.
I think the answer theoretically is yes, Leslie. It's, there may be some issues with it, but theoretically, yes. But
I live in a community 24.
I think part of the thing that we were
We have our
discussing
own system.
was creating that density, like you're talking about, where you do have a cluster of houses close together, but we wanted to provide them that, that rural kind of aspect of it and still provide space, but kind of cluster the buildings together. So you can do those septics, in one big field or one. So we spoke a little bit about that.
Yeah, we did.
And I know we were talking about percentages and trying to meet the right percentage on part, it was like green space.
Yeah, there was a lot of different elements to the reasoning behind it.
Bill,
Well, there's a couple of things, but I'm trying to get this issue. There's a lot of areas in the center of town where we created density that aren't being developed. And I think it would be, you'd want to walk very cautiously about creating density further out. And that deals with whole other aspects of the town plan of maintaining our rural, our rural environment and our outside perimeter. But it's how can we take advantage of these areas that are on water and sewer now that aren't being developed? And I think you have to come to the realization with what it takes to do building these days and what to create housing. And just extending more density isn't the answer. We've got areas in town where a lot of open land that allows substantial density in town, and it's not being taken advantage of. Question is why, okay? And how do you address those issues? And it's the cost of housing today. It's the cost of construction. It's the cost of doing those things. And then my other, this is a minor, as a request, is how can I get on the agenda to kind of come to some sort of conclusion about short-term rentals? Because that is a housing issue. And that's something that can be solved. A lot of communities this year have jumped on that issue, realizing it has eaten into their availability of homes for residences, for residents and people who live and work in their communities. And I think we should be closely, I'm not saying ban it, but I think it should be, it sits out there in the open. Every type of other lodging facility is covered by our bylaws. And we are sidestepping or avoiding the issue of short-term rentals.
can I respond to that?
Yeah.
So I agree with you that the issue of short-term rentals was danced around historically here since I got on this committee, and I don't think that's right. I recently, with some help from other people, got together a lot of information about short-term rentals, registration and regulation, and I've given it to Peter to look at with the town manager. And I think it's the first step of what's the appropriate thing to do first. And back to a thing that Heidi said when she was here last, that that Gordon was gathering information. His information is not very complete, and he needs that information to speak intelligently and to figure out what we want to do about it. And my last comment will be, personally, I thought that the report that was done about 6 months ago was not terribly helpful, because it didn't take into account really the information around us. It was throughout the state. And so that's why I went and got some help and tried to get further information as what's the first step? Maybe the first step is just to register so we know exactly how many of them there are. And then where do we go from there? So that's being looked at by Peter and Scott now.
Okay, we have these things can drag on and not get addressed, and I would like to see you establish some time in the near future on the agenda where those that have issues and concerns about it can come and have a rational discussion about it.
You got it.
Does the town ever send out an RFP for development? Heidi?
Yeah.
We do.
We put out an RFP for the Depot Street properties. Yeah, we've done that.
And what happened with that?
I mean, I don't think I want to summarize it, but it just ended up.
I know something about it.
Yeah, we put a lot of time and energy. And it just ultimately wasn't, it didn't.
Parking became a problem.
A lot of things like that, but, I don't think I should summarize it, but we could talk offline.
Other issues?
I raised that in light of Bill's comment about having land that's ready to be developed that isn't being developed, and in areas where we do want to encourage more density.
Any other issues? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Bye.
Aye.